Good morning and welcome to the 21st annual exhibit of hydrogen and fuel cell technologies. You're doing the right thing. Have a seat. The drinks are on the house. There's coffee and soft drinks on the road. We have been discussing hydrogen and fuel cell technology for quite some time, not within Germany alone. It's an international interest, of course, but particularly a European focus is going to be the subject of our next talk. We'll be talking with Marieke Reijalt, who's Executive Director of the European Hydrogen Association. Marieke Reijalt is also the Office Coordinator of HYRE, which is the European Association for Hydrogen and Fuel Cells and Electromobility in European regions. Please welcome with me Marieke Reijalt.
Hi, Brian.
Morning.
Hi.
Or afternoon. I suppose before we get into the, we've been on this stage before, but before we get into the details of what's been happening recently and the history of your organization, perhaps we should talk about the origin of the organization, when it was formed, and what actually it does.
Yes. Well, first of all, I think the European Hydrogen Association, of course, should be mentioned as indeed the birthplace of HYRE. I think the relationship, of course, of these organizations in time has been that the European Hydrogen Association was founded in 2000 as a millennium initiative, and it was founded actually by 6 national initiatives. These kind of associations tend to be formed at universities, at research centers, where people, of course, first see the potential of these technologies also to develop a market for the application. So the 6 founding members were France, were Italy, were Germany, Sweden, Norway, were actually the ones that pulled together a European initiative. And in 2008, as we saw this organization growing with not only research and university colleagues, but also increasingly industry and smaller and bigger industry stakeholders, this organization tended to attract the first public government interest as well. So government officials became individual members, regions sent their department heads for mobility and energy there. So the National Association started to represent quite a community of stakeholders. And from this, the regional and local authorities felt in 2008 that there should be a dedicated initiative actually for regions and cities to share with them the first experience in using these applications. So in 2008, that was the birth of HYRE.
Mm-hmm. Now, I remember back in 2000, technology looked different than it does today. There's some surprises that I've seen. Some technologies have been very successful. Before we get to the question of the European differences, and we have to go into detail here, why some countries seem to benefit more from initiatives, why some countries are overlooked by the industries, perhaps we could just raise the general question, what technology changes have you seen in the last 10 years which have led to implementation surprisingly or unsurprisingly? What sort of technological developments have really made your job more interesting?
Well, I think when I started to become involved in this, actually already, before the millennium, I worked in California, where my work there, I became actually aware of fuel cell technology. And yeah, we saw at the end of the 90s, of course, the big hype specifically for fuel cells actually in stationary applications. That was the first, I think acknowledgement and on a broader scale of the potential of this technology. And that is actually one of the developments, I would say, that has been a bit surprising. The stationary focus in the beginning shifted rapidly to the transport after 2008, where we started to see really industry moving to declarations of producing these fuel cells around this time. And in fact, we see the first commercial models coming out, as we have seen in the announcements that were made over the last few months. But recently you see also the stationary applications coming up again in visibility and in also demonstrating their potential to become part of this energy transition. So I think what I mainly see, or what we have seen, because it's of course a perception of the whole industry, is that hydrogen and the use of hydrogen connecting to this use in the most powerful and efficient systems, fuel cell systems, that is being recognized as part of a solution to come to this energy transition towards cleaner systems. Because that recognition in the beginning, when we were still explaining the technology, what the potential could be, has now really been demonstrated, I think, enough. Not only at this fair, because you have done your fair share of promoting this, and I think also in Brussels, where we operate, of course, lots of our time, we see this recognition increasing rapidly too. Yeah.
So there are initiatives in many nations and in various states in Germany, for example. It seems to me, if you go through the map of Europe, that despite initiatives, some governments pay less attention to these technologies than others. There seems to be nations where the governments take this technology very seriously. There are politicians that come to the stands here and greet the manufacturers and discuss with them, and there's other countries perhaps that get less attention from the government. It seems to be important because governments can also foster through legislation or through environmental policies the implementation of various technologies. So if you went through the map of Europe, I don't know how frankly you can discuss this topic, but if you go through the map of Europe, what areas seem to be a little bit in the shadow of the government's view, and what areas seem to be well perceived from a governmental perspective?
Well, I think, first of all, probably a lot of people of the countries themselves will agree with me that governments are not a kind of entity with one face. I think if we talk government, also if we talk commission, we are all dealing with the people working there. And as I said just now, the acknowledgement of the potential of the technologies is, I think, an overall increasing in every country and in every official you talk to, even in countries that do not have an H2 mobility initiative. You find colleagues in these departments that are receptive to what you are telling them, and also most of them, I would say, within our community of 22 national associations active in these countries, are aware of the potential. It is just a question of how will the support for these technologies become part of their different budget line items. And that is an action not only in Brussels but in every country that you would need to pursue consistently as an association of this type. If we want to promote as an association or as a sector these technologies, we have to constantly make sure that the people who decide on the line items in the budget are informed and do see us in the right meetings that are deciding on these roadmaps and strategic plans. Like in Brussels, we have a recent energy union communication. And although hydrogen is mentioned, I still feel that the sector needs a bigger acknowledgement there. So people in the Commission are aware of this technology. They are supporting a full EU joint undertaking program for fuel cells and hydrogen since years. So any official in the Commission can inform himself on the potential. And in the countries, it's the same. We see a lot of different country representatives here as well. And it's just an effort of being and staying in their face to make sure at the right time, at the right moment, they just fill in the blanks in their budget line items with support for hydrogen and fuel cells. And the examples of this are there. In my own country, I'm from the Netherlands. 2-3 years ago, there was almost no line item or activity in the Dutch government. 2.5 years ago, they decided to coordinate an important project of the EU in the Trans-European Network for Transport program, a €1 trillion program of developing infrastructure for road and rails. It consists of everything. They have a small innovative budget for new technologies, and we could develop national plans for hydrogen infrastructure there because the Commission saw the need to start operating on this level as well. Well, being Dutch, the Dutch saw that there was co-funding to write their own national plan with a bit of extra money, so they jumped onto that and became coordinators of the first hydrogen infrastructure plan in the TEN-T program in the EU. And that's how things started to develop in the Netherlands, and they are now signing up for large-scale bus deployment programs under the joint undertaking. So things can happen very quickly once it is being translated, this acknowledgement and awareness, in a line item in their budget.
But do you still feel sometimes that there's doors that you can simply walk through, and the other areas when you go to speak to the politicians or contact persons you have to address, it's more like crashing a party than walking through an open door? There must be some regional differences. We'll talk about this from the industrial side later, because certainly there are regional differences in the European Union. But are there still identifiable differences in perception? There certainly are in implementation. There's some regions that are just not quite up to the speed of some other countries, and the comparison for me is rather fascinating because maybe there's an easy explanation for that.
Well, I think what the difficulty in acknowledging that the technology has such potential that you are confident to write a significant amount of budget and support for these technologies is, of course, indeed at different levels, in the sense that these decisions are also made with I would say a very intensive exchange at industry level, at the national level. If you don't see a lot of industry pushing the topic in a certain country, then of course for an official it is, well, what is it indeed doing for my so-called growth and employment, the two key words for any EU country at the moment. And what the new technologies always, not only fuel cell technologies, but any technology that wants to be implemented on a larger scale is being confronted with, is indeed being small and being a new kid on the block. It's always difficult to demonstrate that potential that you have on also new industries that could form in your country or in your regions to support the implementation of these applications. And indeed we do see differences, but I also must recognize that with our national members, we have such a dedicated group of stakeholders in all these national initiatives and regional initiatives that we all are aware of these examples, like what I mentioned in the Dutch, do not feel that our commitment to this is still very much justified and important. I also want to mention the Spanish Hydrogen Association, who is a co-exhibitor in our stand since years, and Sagrari Miguel is here together with my colleagues of the Italian activities. Because the Spanish Hydrogen Association consistently has had a presence also at your fair. We all know that the Spanish government, like the Italian government, has never developed a plan. They have supported research, they have supported universities to develop components, systems in this sector, but we haven't seen the same support as in Germany, at the point of reference we of course all have in mind. But then again, who is organizing the World Hydrogen Energy Conference for the second time in a row? That's the Spanish Hydrogen Association. And I must really compliment the colleagues in Spain. The WEC will be organized from the 12th till the 16th of June. In Zaragoza. Zaragoza is one of our active higher regions, higher member regions. They have been in the board of higher since the founding of the organization. And together they have consistently made sure that the topic is being communicated and being proposed as an opportunity for Spanish and local industry. And I think that is one of the key examples of, even though in Spain we don't see a big government support and big industry, except for industries like Abengoa, who is here. But although there's a lot of auto industry and automotive industry also in Spain, we don't see the same level of action as here in Germany. But the purpose of associations like the EHA is to make sure that this is an inclusive development in the end.
It's good that you mentioned Abengoa. They're a company that has such a broad profile. Sometimes when the profiles of companies are so small and you discuss with them their technologies on stage, one loses sight of a larger perspective for hydrogen and fuel cell technologies. To show you what I mean, my next question, we talk about implementation, applications, and there's something surprisingly unconcrete for the common listener about, what exactly are we talking about? So a concrete example of what are the potentials of this? You also mentioned the question of job creation and what is financially viable. Well, the other side of the coin is if you drive around or if you're in Berlin during the summer, there are ozone alarms, there's Feinstaubalarm, the small particles from diesel vehicles. That is, according to European law, in downtown Berlin, you should not be able to drive a diesel vehicle on several days, sometimes several days running in downtown Berlin. This is interesting for me because already we're working on alternatives to diesel delivery vehicles, alternatives to the hydrogen bus, and it's getting to the point where this technology is, on the one hand, increasingly affordable, but on the other hand, environmentally mandated. It becomes increasingly necessary. I do not believe that it is simply job creation alone that is motivating people. I believe that this, of course, this holy grail of the environment is in everyone's minds, but also in stationary applications. So you've been involved, or you've observed the initially niche applications. Forklift trucks is a classic example, and now we have bus structures that are up and running. Do you see that as a sort of step-by-step evolution towards more commercial applications. Already right now there are bus services. They seem to be expanding. Do you believe the legislation is in place that pressures the whole community, the breathers of the air in downtown Berlin, to advocate for this technology?
Well, I think that if you ask the EU Commission colleagues, they say, well, we have put in a lot of legislation in place for member states to really comply with ambitions and with emission reductions that made sure that we can live in at least healthy cities. They refer always to all the different directives that are there, and they're right. If member states would really implement consistently these type of targets and ambitions, then the air would be a lot cleaner, of course. But then again, we are confronted constantly, also in Brussels itself. 2 weeks ago, the air quality in Brussels, the fine particle levels in Brussels on a Friday, just before the Easter break, were higher than in Beijing. And the London... don't tell this to any...
Don't mention this in China, please. The secret stays here.
And the London is taken to court for their, well, not sufficient actions on air quality. In the Netherlands, the Dutch government is taking to court as we speak for not doing enough on contribution to climate change solutions. So things from the bottom up are changing, of course. I think, again, as we are still a smaller community compared to all the other applications we use for transport, the diesel, even the biogas, methane solutions, we need to still carve our place into this. And we have to make sure that industry, although even automotive industry, is working on different fuels, that these new technologies have a constant positive and increasing visibility in automotive messages. I think if we talk about regional differences and national differences, I would like to mention that in all these 22 national associations, the ambition is to get vehicles on the ground and to get fuel cell buses on the ground, because they will demonstrate to anybody, the decision makers, consumers, that these technologies are just wonderful examples of where we are with clean technology and what we can achieve. They will be convincing in itself, but we don't have them in every country and in every capital. We have 2 fuel cell cars in Brussels. That's all. 2 fuel cell cars in Brussels, and no bus, no forklift truck. So, and this is after years of having a program in place, of having support for industry to develop these models. So there is still a lot to do to make sure we are in the right place, showing the right people what we want to achieve.
I should mention, if there's any questions in the audience, just raise your hand and we'll bring you a microphone. You just gave the example of Brussels. When I break down the involvement, let's say at this fair, there may be a correlation between the size of the industrial involvement in these technologies and the number of test applications that are on the road. That is, for some reason, I think there is an advantage that Germany has so many players, research facilities, and what do engineers want to do when they build something? They want to get in and drive it around. Come on, that's what, that's why they're engineers. And if they can build 3 of them and drive them around, they can get all their friends to it. I mean, basically, there is this sort of once you design it, you've got to see if it flies. And there is a large number of test projects, particularly stationary applications. And here I think it's because they have the cooperation of the energy providers. So if I use that as an overview for an integration between state initiatives on the one hand, the industrial base, and also existing energy forms, can I translate this model to other areas in Europe, or does it not apply? Germany seems to be privileged in that vantage.
Yeah, I think, well, not only privileged, I think it also has yeah, you can call it responsibility because of that, to make sure that we indeed take time out to plan what can happen in other countries. And of course, as an industry, yeah, you can talk large industry, but the activities of hydrogen in those industries is still only part of their core activities. So, yeah, manpower-wise and possibilities to indeed engage other players in other countries are limited. And it's not that we don't recognize that, but I think we should, as a collective, and especially here, we have an opportunity to meet with each other, to share a lot of different experiences in different countries. We see that new member states, Bulgaria is here with a stand. These are, even though you probably see them and think, Bulgaria and are not doing much about this. I think the real contribution of this fair also to that is that we are confronted with ambitious and also active actors in these countries that are looking for those links with the companies in the countries where things are happening. Not only to do business, but to learn from, well, who do I need to engage with to bring this further? So that is an important aspect, I think, from this fair as well, and of organizations like ourselves. But then again, in order to make sure that in Europe, because we are talking European support for this, we still need, and I would say, a bit of an accelerated effort to make sure that all countries that have this potential of industry or research. In new member states, there is still a vast knowledge of electrolyzer and hydrogen production experts and research institutes that can still be tapped into. Because of the space and also nuclear industry in those places, the knowledge of hydrogen and experts in these fields is still impressive. So the way to engage those in these type of activities, in fuels and hydrogen activities, not only in fundamental research, but in translating that to business opportunities, is still something that needs attention and support in order to make it a complete European rollout in the end. And everybody, because of air quality issues, they are not different in Brussels than in Budapest or in Warsaw, or so solutions close to home. I think we all see an increasing interest in going local, not only with your vegetables, but also in supporting your local industry. So you see that there could be more speed up action in that field, I think, Brian.
Mm-hmm. Any questions from the audience? If we look, again, geographically from the north to the south, I had one German customer on the stage with me, and we were talking about renewable energy. I mentioned renewables, of course, because everyone's dream is to have hydrogen created exclusively through renewable sources. We talk about green hydrogen, and it's always interesting to ask the question, where's the hydrogen from? When we look at the source of renewables, even within Germany, there's a geography. The wind comes from the north. Lots of wind up there. there, let's exploit it. And boy, are they doing a lot. If you drive through the German countryside in certain regions, all over the place, the wind turbines. The further you get south, though, and this was someone from the south of Germany with a Frankish accent, and he was telling me, well, actually, he has solar cells on his roof. He doesn't pay a dime for energy, and the whole thing cost him about 7 cents a kilowatt hour, which is like a fantastic price. Within that geography, you could go and you could say, oh, look at the north, Norway, hydropower. There's countries that have so much electricity that they will allow you to tank your electric car for free. And when you go to the south, and here's the question. I was talking to my Spanish colleague here, and it was fascinating. There's so much solar potential, and then there's the question of how is it being exploited. And this is a policy question. On the one hand, it needs initial investment. So that's another way to go through the European community and draw a map. There are various forms of renewables, but of course renewables pose the question of storage, and hydrogen is a wonderful utility to store energy with. How is it being implemented?
Yeah, well, I think we have seen it in the second program of the joint undertaking, that the Commission really wanted the program to focus on the challenges they see in implementing the ambitions on renewable energy. The focus on energy storage in the second program of the joint undertaking is much bigger than before, and the link with then transport as a market valid use of the hydrogen, because that is where you can gain the most also economically in using that type of hydrogen. Well, I think indeed the uptake of the solution hydrogen has an interesting history as well, because 5 years ago, when the strategic energy technology plan of the Commission took shape, there was an initiative of the big utilities to start an association for the storage of energy. And I think I mentioned this before. I'm jealous of, indeed, because of their acronym. They are called EASE. EASE, as if it's easy to indeed go about this transition. It's a European Association for the Storage of Energy. It was set up in the beginning with a large support also from companies like EDF and E.ON. And in the beginning we said, as European Hydrogen Association, well, we should be sister organizations. We have the hydrogen solution, so why not team up? And then they said, well, let's wait with that. We do flywheels, we do batteries, we do hydro pump storage. But hydrogen, yeah, really, that is still so far away, and we don't think it's a good idea to be sisters yet. You could follow us, but not too close. Then this association was set up, and actually one of my colleagues became the Secretary General of that association. And I said to him, well, this was the first response from your board to this, but how will this operate in practice? Because you will be making a roadmap, and it will be a bit strange if hydrogen is not included in that. So in the end, we came up with an European energy storage technology roadmap, where hydrogen is in the second chapter of this roadmap. And this has happened over the last 2-3 years. So, as I said in the beginning, the recognition of hydrogen is there. We are still in the phase of demonstrating the use of hydrogen and also the economic use of hydrogen in this field. And I think we have to consistently make sure that we are in the right place to promote this, with the right commitment, with the right dedication to quality, to inclusively involving other actors in other countries as well. That is definitely, I think, our task for this Commission's term, to make sure that that's translated in good support and funding.
We have about 45 seconds left, and it's always unfair to raise a question in 45 seconds. Simple question. You've seen all the things that are happening this year on the fair. What are the first 3 phone calls you simply have to make after you get home from the fair? The first 3 things that you'd like to do based on what you've seen here.
That's interesting. And, well, I do think that also for us, this link in general with the Hanover Fair and other countries like India is definitely something. We are part of a cooperation with the European Commission to have a technology cooperation exchange that is still not materialized enough. And I realized with the number of visitors I got from India, especially to the EHA booth, which was great, I definitely have to make that one phone call. And well, the second phone call I think will be a lot of phone calls. I do think that we have to make sure that indeed the actors in countries that are working on important aspects of this technology are represented here, that they find each other here, not only to sign up business contracts, but to get the pulse on what is happening in the sector. That is definitely something. I've met a few who also visited us that are not yet exhibiting here, but I do think it's still the one gathering place in Europe every year where you meet most people. And then my last call will be to the colleagues in the Commission, because I do think they should be more aware of this. I don't know if you have picked up anybody who is here from the Commission, but my colleagues there, we do not have an expert on hydrogen fuel sector technologies nor the DG Mobility, DG Energy directorates. They're all learning, and the place to do that are fairs like this, I think.
Wonderful. So we look forward to seeing you next year, of course.
Thank you.
I've been talking to Marieke Reijalt, who's Executive Director of the European Hydrogen Association. She is also Office Coordinator of HYRE, the European Association for Hydrogen Fuel Cells and Electromobility in European regions. Their booth is E65 in that direction. The conversation has to continue, of course. Thank you very much for being here. Look forward to see you next year.
Bye.
Bye-bye. And up next, we're going to be talking to Dr. Joachim Krömer, who is from Borit, and they'll be talking about metallic bipolar plates manufactured on industrial scale. That could radically reduce the cost of fuel cells, so it's an important topic. Stay tuned. The drinks are on the house. Thank you. Thank you, Marieke.